Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Koralik with Figure It Out Productions. The following video is part of our Quick Shoot series. Hey guys, it's Adam here. Recently I was in Osaka, Japan, and while I was there, I of course wanted to look for video games, because duh. This area is called Den Town. It's like a district in Osaka. It's kind of like Osaka's answer to Akihabara. And I just went down the street, like this is just the entrance, and I walked down the street, and the first thing I see, Hyper Media Shop. This is a, I guess you would call it kind of a more modern game store, as they really only deal in current gen stuff, but they actually go all the way back to 6th gen stuff, but not by much. Like they have some PlayStation 2, some GameCube, some OG Xbox, no Dreamcast, oddly enough. But yeah, so I just thought this was the first place where I could actually film any footage, and I decided to do that. Now, one thing you guys are going to get annoyed with me on is that a lot of the times in these videos, the footage I shot it wasn't like a lot of the game stores where I film in North America or Europe where I like have permission to do it and people will like get out of the way and like let me film. This was different because I couldn't ask to do it, and it turns out in Japan it's actually like wildly illegal to film people without their permission. So all of my footage was shot like guerrilla style. So I hope you guys appreciate the sacrifice. I never got caught. Although I did get some looks, so that's as far as that went. But basically, most of the time I just kind of shot when I figured I could get away with it. So like in this case, there was really nobody up there for the moment, so I decided to just film as quickly as possible. So yeah, a lot of PlayStation 4 and PlayStation Vita stuff here, and displays, things like that. This is some more of the retro stuff, PSP stuff. PlayStation 3, which PlayStation 3 is not really at that retro right now in Japan. Like it still gets new releases, and like relevant new releases. Like there's a new Yakuza game on there and stuff, which is kind of interesting. And contrary to popular belief, I wanted to point this out. A lot of people kept saying, oh, you won't find Xbox stuff. They don't have Xbox stuff in Japan. There's no Xbox section. It's like, no, bullshit. There is. And like every store I went to had Xbox sections. Granted, they're not usually that big, but they do exist. But yeah, so more PS3 stuff. Of course, there's signs there in yen and all that stuff. And more games. A basic conversion for you guys. 1,000 yen. $1 US is basically 1,000 110 yen. So basically the best way to think about it is you saw something there that said it was like 5,000 yen, right? So you can think, okay, that's about $50, but not really. You have to drop it down a little, so then it's more like 45. So basically just take the first two numbers, and that's almost what it is. Just drop it a couple of bucks generally. But yeah, so we got more stuff here. Obviously new releases for PS4, and this section was just like all the new stuff that had just recently come out. See, like I said, there was a new Yakuza game that they got. Maybe we'll get that one day. I don't know. I never know with the Yakuza games. They've gotten like 12 of them over there when we've only gotten like 5, those numbers are not exactly accurate. Switch section. Switch is actually very hard to find over there. The games are not. Well, some of the games are like sold out. But yeah, it was definitely cool to just kind of explore and see all this insanity. Because you have to understand, like, this shit's overwhelming, man. Like, this was the first store I walked into. The first. And already I'm seeing, like, oh, I want this, I want this, I want this. It gets out of control real fast. And luckily, my hotel was not that far from Den Town. So I actually made it a habit of, like, getting used to figuring out how to go down there. And, and just kind of reassess stuff all the time. So I actually was in this store like 4 or 5 times, just kind of like compiling lists and figuring out everything I wanted from which stores I wanted and all that stuff. A lot of work, but I think it ended up working out in my favor. Quick look, here's a PS1 game that made me laugh. Jellyfish the Healing Friend. You'd find a lot of really weird titles that don't really make sense in English. Nice little GameCube section there. And then just a couple of, like, a lot of DS and 3DS and PlayStation 2 and stuff like that. But anyway, let's go ahead and take a look at the stuff I picked up, shall we? So that was Hyper Media Shop. Pretty cool, right? Obviously kind of a strange name, but it definitely gets your attention if you're a foreigner, because it's in English, even though it's odd. But anyway, so that store taught me some things about Japan. First, this is some Japanese travel tips. If you don't care, then you can just skip to the time code and see the actual games. But in the event you ever go to Japan, here's some stuff you might want to know. So they're very much a cash-based economy, meaning things like the credit card are very new there, believe it or not. And that took me by surprise. Now, that wasn't a problem at this particular store or in Den Town in general, but they're making a big effort over there, at least at the point I went, to try and push the credit card. Like, they want more people to use it because they realize that foreigners typically want to use credit cards. So it's an incentive to kind of boost the Japanese economy. So there's actually a lot of stores that would give you 5% off if you paid with a Visa, specifically a Visa. And in a lot of stores, what they would also do is if you are a foreigner, meaning you're not obviously not a Japanese citizen or a Japanese resident, they would actually let you go tax-free. And you'll notice it. It'll say like there'll be a giant sign outside the door that will say like tax-free. The sign's always in red with white text and says tax-free, and it's always in English too, as is always the description of it. Usually there's also a Chinese description as well because they really aim at Chinese citizens and American citizens. And fun fact about Japan: if you're not from Japan or China, you're from America. Other countries don't exist. It's fucking weird. Like, no knocking of my Canadian friends, but like over there, I noticed the American flag on all sorts of stuff. But the only place I saw any reference to Canada was a restaurant that used the shape of Canada as like their menu because they thought it was a neat design. They didn't even really know what Canada was. It's strange, man. It is strange. But anyway, so yeah, my point is, you can save a lot of money over there if you kind of know what you're doing. If you take the 5% off and you figure out the whole tax-free thing. Now, the way the tax-free thing works, because they can't really explain it to you, they generally lack the language skills, so here's how it goes. You have to spend, depending on the store, you have to spend a minimum of 5,000 yen or 5,400 yen. Those are almost always the two numbers. And that's roughly $45 and $50 respectively. And which is not hard to do when you're talking about video games. So you have to spend that, and then when you're at the register, you have to present them with your passport. Sometimes that's enough. You don't have to do anything else. Other times you have to. There's always a sign nearby, or you just have to say tax-free. Like, they know that phrase. And what will happen is they will be like, okay, and they will basically itemize everything you've got, and they'll fill out a whole ton of paperwork. It takes a little while. Like, it takes some time for them to do this. And then once they fill out all their paperwork, they basically staple some receipts to your passport, which might sound kind of like, ugh, do I really want to? And they'll take up pages in your passport by stapling to it, which sounds like a bad thing, but when you actually go to the airport, there's a customs booth where all you do is you walk up there and you just take the receipts out and throw them in a bin, and then you're good to go. So yeah, you basically instantly either get 8% off right then and there. They just digitally remove it so that you're not charged for it in the first place. Other places will charge you for it up front and then have you get what's a cash back, where they basically charge you for it and then they just count out all the tax and then hand it back to you in cash. Now personally, I don't really like to use cash, especially from other countries, because it's essentially, when I leave, it's toilet paper, like and I don't like the idea that I have to spend it. So I know you could go to like a currency exchange, but you lose so much money doing that, it's not really worth it. So I try to avoid cash whenever possible. But that said, there were a lot of stores that only took cash, so keep that in mind. Now, fortunately, again, Hyper Media Shop was not one of them. And so what I did was I was near the hotel. Den Town was near the hotel relatively. So what I would do is I would go down to Den Town multiple times. Usually I would walk, although you could take the train. I did that a couple times as well. But I would usually walk down there, and I would go to the same stores over and over again, and I would kind of like analyze everything I wanted because it's fucking overwhelming. And I would be like, okay, this store has this store has that, this is how much this one has, this one is how much it costs over there, blah, blah, blah. And long story short, I would group all my items from various stores and figure out like where I was going to buy things and which would work out the best. So in the case of Hyper Media Shop, long story short, here's everything I got. Let's go. All right, so here's all the pickups. The first thing I got was an OG Xbox game, which I was not intending to get any OG Xbox games while I was there because, funny enough, I have all the OG Xbox Japanese exclusives, which was kind of refreshing. When I was walking around in the sections, it's like, fuck you, I don't even care. Like, I'm sorry to have it. But this one just caught me off guard because I wasn't expecting to see this. I saw NBA Live 2002. Well, who cares? We had that game. Yeah, but their version had Michael Jordan on the cover. You know, Wizards Michael Jordan. Our version had someone, I don't even know his name, and I pay attention to the NBA, someone who was on the Houston Rockets back then. But obviously that person, if I don't even know him and I pay attention to the NBA, they certainly wouldn't have not known him over there. But Michael Jordan, especially, he was still playing at that point. Marketability, so they put him on the cover, and that's the only reason I wanted it. Is the only reason it's just Jordan's on the cover, and it's almost like a throwback to getting basketball trading cards or something. I don't know, but it was super cheap. It was about 50 yen. It was 50 yen, which is about 45 cents. So that was totally fine. This game I really wanted because a lot of people were saying, "Hey, go get this," and I had heard about it. I Am Setsuna for the Nintendo Switch. This was the first Japanese exclusive for the Switch. Now this came out digitally in North America and probably Europe as well, but it came out physically in Japan. And even though it looks like, you know, fuck, I can't read it, I'm screwed, especially on the back, it makes no reference to the fact that it actually is in English. If you boot this up into a North American Nintendo Switch, of course the Switch is region free, it actually, the whole game is fully in English. And on top of that, even like the Switch dashboard where it shows you like an icon of whatever game you're playing, even that has the same cover art but says it I Am Setsuna in English. It doesn't say it in Japanese. So aside from like the artwork on here, you would never know that this was actually a Japanese release because it's fully English compatible, which is great. This one though is not. This is one of those Numba Nunga with power-up kit games. You know, there's a ton of these things made by Koei Tecmo. Some of them get brought over here, some of them don't. Most of them don't actually. There's actually two of these. There's this one, and then there was one with like a red cover. The one with the red cover is a very expensive game. It retails for like $90 over there, which is fucking bananas. But so I didn't pick that one up, partially because I didn't want to spend that much money on a game I knew I was never going to play. Not only because I couldn't, you know, it's Japanese, it's very Japanese intensive, but on top of that, it's also like a strategy game, which is a game I would never care to play anyway. This one was, the only reason I picked it up is because it's cheaper and it probably will never come out here, whereas I was reading that the other one probably will, so if that's the case, I'll wait and get it cheaper here and in English. So this one, probably not, so I picked it up. A couple of PS4 games I got there. This one I regret. Dead or Alive Extreme 3 Fortune. Nothing again, I don't regret it because like, oh, I just got the cartoon titties, oh, I'm upset with myself. No bullshit like that. This game's kind of infamous because the first two did come out here and then the third one did not, for a combination of two reasons. One, it didn't sell particularly well originally, the first two versions, so there wasn't much of a financial motive to release it in North America or Europe, but also they claim part of the reason was that they didn't like how, you know, you release something like this and you get nothing but bad press about how you're oppressing women and all this other stuff. So they didn't want to release it here. So you could import it, the console's region free, and I thought, oh perfect, I'll do that because then we can play it on my other channel on Game Society and then, you know, we'll make funny videos with it and all that stuff. That was the plan, but what I had forgotten was that the Japanese version is only in Japanese, which I know sounds like herp derp, how did you not know that? Well, the Hong Kong version is in Japanese and English. That's the mistake I made, is that I had forgotten they hadn't done that with both. They'd only done it with the Hong Kong version. So I was hoping, last-ditch effort, once I had it, I thought, oh, okay, maybe I'll put it in there and I'll download a patch. Maybe the English language will be on it. No. So it's kind of, if we do videos with it, it'll be a lot harder than it otherwise would have been. But so I kind of regret it. I kind of wish I had got, if I had gotten it at all, I wish I had gotten the Hong Kong version. This one I don't regret at all, though. This is the exact opposite situation. Parappa the Rapper. You remember that? They brought it back for the PS4. It's a remake, I guess, of the first game. And it only got a physical release in Japan. But unlike that one, this one is extremely import-friendly. Like, when you first turn it on, at least on my North American PS4, it starts in English, and then it flat out asks you in English, do you want to play this in English or Japanese? You hit English, and you would never know that you're playing a Japanese game. It's very, very import-friendly. So, and it's very cheap. This retails for $15. So if you are all into that franchise, you have a PS4, highly recommend importing this. For the Nintendo Wii, a console I never picked up games for, this was like the one game where I was like, okay, if I find it, I'm going to get it, and I did. I don't remember exactly what it's called in Japanese, so I'll say what its North American title would have been, Fatal Frame 4. Fatal Frame is a horror game series. The first two were on the OG Xbox and PS2, the third one was on the PS2. The fifth one was released in Europe and Japan on the Wii U, and only digitally in North America, but the fourth one here was never released outside of Japan and was only released on the Wii. Online, you know, in the West, to get it, it's like an $80 game. But over there, I found it a few times, usually for around 40. They had it for 30, so I was really happy with that. And it was just like a sickening reminder. This is something you guys need to know when you go, if you ever go over there. This is like herp derp obvious, but it gets a little gross. Is that a lot of games you see online that are Japanese imports, you'd be like, wow, that's expensive. Or even when you think they're cheap online, you don't know how much fucking cheaper they are actually over there. It is sick. It is sick how much less expensive stuff is in a retail store over there than it is online. It can absolutely blow your mind. Like, I'll give you some examples, even though they're not that really pertinent to this particular video. So you know the game, I think I made a post about this on my like Facebook fan page. The game Shining Wisdom for the Sega Saturn. North American version of that game is $200. So people never want to pay that, so they get the Japanese version and they use a strategy guide, because the Japanese version is much cheaper. So I see people paying like 10, 20 bucks online for the Japanese version, right? You actually go to Japan, I was finding that game in the fucking dollar bins. I mean, it's literally 108 yen, which is generally about $1. That's like supposed to be the exchange rate there. And I'm finding it multiple times, complete, perfect condition, a buck, a buck, a buck. And so those sellers are smart, because they'll pick up all these copies and then they'll sell them for like 10, 20 bucks. They make a shit ton of money on it. And then you as the buyer thinking like, well, that's so much better than the North American version. So imagine it's always like that. You go over there and you find all these games that are so much fucking cheaper, it'll blow your mind. But yeah, so whatever. Moving on. Oh, I should save that one for last. I got a bunch of Wii U games, which I'm really happy about, because I knocked out, this store helped me knock out pretty much every remaining Japanese Wii U exclusive I needed. First up, Monster Hunter Frontier G9. There was a bunch of these. In North America, we only got one of them, Monster Hunter 3. But over there, they got like fucking 6 of them or something like that. It was actually pretty crazy. So there you go. Yokai Watch Just Dance. I'm not familiar with the Yokai Watch series. I know it's a thing here. It's an anime thing, and they had some Just Dance iteration over there. This game is worthless. I've seen this online. Online it sells for a lot. I mean, not a lot, like, you know, we're talking 20, 30 bucks. Another perfect example. Over there, multiple times I saw this in the 108 yen bin. It's like $1. It's like, fuck. You can absolutely go nuts over there seeing this shit. Then I got Nintendo Joy Sound Wii U. It's like a karaoke game. It comes with a microphone and stuff too. Dragon Quest X all-in-one package. I guess there were, according to the back anyway, there were 3 versions of Dragon Quest X, and I guess they had separate releases, but this one has all 3 versions in one disc, which, that's nice. F1 Race Stars Powered Up Edition. This game actually came out in the West for the Xbox 360 and the PS3 physically. I think the Wii U got a digital version of this in North America, but only physically was it released in Japan. So very cool to have that. And I'm starting to realize, I realize why that is now, and I'll talk about that in a second after we get to the last 2 games. This last one, Silver Star Japan Jinsai Shogi series. I'm not sure if that's the name of the game or if that's just like the subtitle, but whatever, that's the game. It's like a mahjong game or whatever. Some sort of board game I'm not familiar with. So that's it for the Wii U games. And then I got a game I'd wanted for a long time but never really put much thought into trying to pick up. Pepsi Man for the PS1. Obviously an infamous game sponsored by Pepsi that only came out in Japan, whereby you basically are running away from shit. Pepsi Man was their mascot for a long time, and he had a video game, so there you go. Now, I could just end the video here, but I am going to address basically what I was talking about with the why they get so many physical releases. We don't. Maybe I'll talk about this in a live show at some point, but right now I'll just summarize by saying, it turns out Japan has horrific internet access. And as a result, they prefer physical media pretty much for everything. So they might be that, eventually for us physical collectors, they might be like this last bastion of physical editions in the future. So keep an eye out for that. Yeah, you know what, I'll explain that in detail on a live stream and a Q&A or something at some point. So anyway, this has gone on long enough. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. I'll see you all later.